case. Tell us what you're asking for and whether you think you can get a fair shake at a time when people who have been less critical of the president than you have found themselves bestowed with all kinds of pardon gifts.
Right. So, first of all, what I had filed on this past Wednesday were two writs. One is a writ of habeas corpus, and the other is the writ of mandamus, if this is what you're referring to. What I'm asking for is in the habeas corpus, which deals directly with me, is that pursuant to the First Step Act, which is really the only bipartisan thing that Donald Trump accomplished by signing on the executive order, which, again, was bipartisan, they have done absolutely nothing on. And there is earned time credit. Now, I did the mandamus because I made a promise to guys back at Otisville and others, like my buddies Tony Meatballs and Big Minty, that I wasn't going to stop once I got out, once I was put back on home confinement. The writ of mandamus will affect 153,000 eligible federal inmates in order to, under 18 U.S.C. 3632, will be able to receive their earned time credits based upon programming credit as well as work credits so that they, too, could be released to either home confinement or supervised release.
I'm only going to slow you down because we got statutory codes, we got the First Step Act, we got Tony Meatballs. It's a lot to track. But what you're saying, sir, is that you have advocacy that's not only for yourself, but also is for other people who are incarcerated?
That's correct. That's on the mandamus.
And so this is you, in a way, calling out something that many have observed, and you've lived it personally, Michael, of course, which is that Donald Trump has tried to, at times, invoke or exploit the justice system for his own political benefit. There was a lot of talk about clemency, for example, at the Republican convention. You seem to be suggesting, in part of your filing here, that they're not doing everything they can to live up to that was more window dressing.
How about that they've done absolutely nothing so far? Remember that President Trump signed the executive order in 2018. 2 years have gone by, and they still can't produce a recidivism guide in order to make a determination how many hours equals how many days. It's really just despicable, and it's just another piece of paper that Donald Trump signed, very much like the kind he used to throw on my desk when he had something that he did, but he didn't really want to do anything with it, other than take credit that he is a prison reform guy and has done more for prison reform than any president since Abraham Lincoln.
Let's get into the pardons, Michael. If someone were watching this period we've lived through 4 years ago, if there was a pardon to be given out from Donald Trump to a close aide, whether they did anything or not, I think we would all agree that at one point in time, you would have been one of those people that he would have been musing about pardoning because you and him did have a close relationship professionally for a long time. We all lived through how that's changed. But take a look at other folks who, like you, were senior aides to the president here in one capacity or another who've gotten these pardons. Flynn, Manafort, Charles Kushner and the family, Roger Stone, Papadopoulos, Congressman Collins, Duncan Hunter. When you look at all that, and we could, I believe, put some of it on the screen, what do you think of these pardons thus far?
No, I think it's like make it rain, right? That's all that he's doing. He's taking political favors and money, right, by people for the sole purpose of giving them pardons. I mean, the man has completely usurped the fact that there is a pardon offer, that there are people who should be receiving pardons. Do I think any of these people should be receiving pardons? Absolutely not. I think that Trump has just taken over the entire country. He wants to run it the same way that he ran the Trump Organization, as if he owns the company, as if he owns the United States of America. I mean, there are people who work in that pardon office all year long, putting together documents, speaking to prosecutors, making sure that the person who receives the pardon is actually entitled to a pardon. Otherwise, basically what you're doing is you're giving the president the ability, like his old Trump Monopoly game, a get out of free jail card, simply because you're a friend. And you're right. I would have received one had I agreed not to come out, not to speak truth to power.
Do you believe that this list we've looked at is about where this ends, or do you think Donald Trump has more pardon surprises before he leaves office?
Oh, I think there's more pardon surprises. See, what I call this in the book, Disloyal, and on Mea Culpa, is this is Trump fatigue. He's wearing the entire country down so that, each and every time that the media keeps talking about this 20 people, this 20 people, another 8 people, another 10 people, all of a sudden, by the end, we're all going to be like, oh, God, please, enough, right? Please just go away. There's 23 more days. So that's when he'll probably try to drop the pardon power for Jared, or Don, Ivanka, Eric, Alan Weisselberg, whoever he thinks, right, will possibly get a federal indictment. But again, something I talked about on your show, Ari, this produces a very significant problem for Donald Trump in the fact that once you receive that pardon power, once you get that pardon, you're no longer able to invoke the Fifth Amendment, right, of the right against self-incrimination, because you cannot be charged. So all of these people may ultimately be his downfall simply because they'll be testifying against him either before a court or a tribunal.
Yeah, as you say, that is a legal paradox that lawyers like yourself sometimes warn clients about what's around the corner, depending on what happens. Of course, you're not there warning him personally about this anymore.
You know what,
you
Ari,
say,
I wish I was.
Go ahead.
Ari, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wish I was there. Because here's what I would be telling him right now. Why don't you knock off the nonsense with the pardons? Why don't you turn around and think about all of the Americans each and every day that are dying? We're having like 9/11 events every day based upon this coronavirus. Why don't you instead, the way that he came out acting like a fool, right? Why don't you invoke, for example, the Production Defense Act? And why don't you, since we have some of these inoculations, these vaccines that have an 85, 90, 95% efficacy rate, why don't we just invoke the Production Defense Act and make sure that all manufacturers are manufacturing it, so that we're not at 2 million dosages. We would be at the Dr. Anthony Fauci expert 20 million doses.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.